The moon hung heavy over the Silver Pine Kingdom, casting long shadows through the ancient forest that surrounded the werewolf stronghold. Queen Alara stood on the balcony of the great stone palace, her golden hair catching the pale light like spun silk. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Inside, her husband, King Aldrich, Alpha of the Northern Pax, held court with his generals, planning another campaign against the vampire covens that had been encroaching on their territories. The war had raged for 3 years now, and Alara had watched it hollow out the man she'd married. The warm, protective mate she'd bonded would become cold, distant, consumed by strategy and bloodshed. She didn't hear him approach. One moment she was alone with her thoughts. The next, a voice like velvet and smoke drifted from the shadows. A queen should not look so melancholy under such a beautiful moon. Alara spun, her hand instinctively moving to the silver dagger at her waist. A man stepped into the moonlight, and her breath caught despite herself. He was tall, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. His features were aristocratic, almost cruelly beautiful, and he wore black that seemed to drink in the darkness around him. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice came out softer than she'd intended. "How did you get past the guards?" "I am called Damien," he said, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to be both respectful and mocking. "As for your guards, they see what I wish them to see. Or don't see, as the case may be." Her eyes widened with recognition and fear. Vampire, among other things. His smile revealed the barest hint of fong. "But I haven't come to harm you, your majesty. Quite the opposite, in fact." She should have screamed, should have called for the guards, transformed, done anything but stand there meeting his gaze. But there was something in his eyes, not compulsion. She would have felt that, but a deep, fathomless sadness that echoed her own. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because I'm tired of this war," he said simply, moving to the balcony railing but maintaining a careful distance from her. "And because I've watched you, Alara Silverpine, and I think you might be tired of it too." "You've been watching me?" She should have been horrified, but instead felt a strange flutter in her chest. "For months now. Forgive the intrusion, but when one plans to infiltrate a kingdom, it's wise to understand at heart." He turned to face her fully. "And you, my dear queen, are very much the heart of this place. Your people adore you. Your husband, well, he used to adore you too, didn't he? Before the war consumed him." The words struck like a physical blow because they were true. Aldrich barely looked at her anymore. Their chambers had grown cold, their conversations reduced to formal pleasantries. The mate bond that should have been their greatest strength had become a hollow echo. "Don't speak of things you don't understand," she said, but there was no heat in her words. "But I do understand," Damien replied softly. "I understand what it's like to be alone even when surrounded by others. To fulfill a role while losing yourself piece by piece." He paused. "I also understand that you possess a gift your husband has long since dismissed." Alara frowned. "What gift?" "Diplomacy, wisdom, the ability to see beyond the next battle to the broader consequences of this endless bloodshed." He took a step closer. "Tell me, when was the last time Aldrich actually listened to your counsel? When did he last value your insight over his general's hunger for vampire blood?" She wanted to defend her husband, but the words wouldn't come. It had been over a year since Aldrich had truly heard her, since her suggestions for peace talks or strategic alliances had been dismissed as feminine softness. "Why would a vampire care about any of this?" she asked instead. "Because I am not like the others of my kind," Damien said. "I don't believe in the supremacy of vampires over werewolves or any other species. I believe in order, in peace, in kingdoms that thrive rather than tear each other apart." His eyes held hers. "And I believe that with the right leadership, the Silver Pine Kingdom could be a beacon of that peace." "Aldrich would never." "Aldrich is no longer capable of peace," Damien interrupted gently. "The war has changed him. You know this. Every day he becomes more brutal, more bloodthirsty. How long before he's no different than the monsters he claims to fight?" The words resonated in a place Alara had been trying to ignore. She'd seen the change in her husband. the way his eyes now gleamed with something feral and uncontrolled during the full moon, the casual cruelty he showed to prisoners, the way he'd laugh when one of his generals suggested burning vampire settlements with civilians still inside. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "For now, just conversation." Damien's smile was disarming. "I'll come again tomorrow night, if you permit it, and the night after. I want you to know me, Illyra, to understand that not all vampires are the blood-drunk creatures your husband paints us to be. And if I refuse, if I call the guards right now, then I'll disappear and you'll never see me again," he said simply. "But you'll always wonder if I was right, if there might have been another way." She should have sent him away, should have ended this dangerous game before it began. But standing there in the moonlight, with this strange, compelling creature looking at her as though she mattered, truly mattered, not just as a queen or a maid or a symbol, but as herself, she found she couldn't. "Tomorrow night," she heard herself say, but only to talk. His smile was like the first crack in a dam. "Only to talk," he agreed, and then he was gone, melting into shadows as though he'd never been there at all. Illyra stood alone on the balcony for a long time after, her heart racing, knowing she'd just made a choice that would change everything. He came the next night, and the night after that. Each time, Damien would emerge in the shadows with that same graceful inevitability, and they would talk. He spoke of history and philosophy, of the long ages he'd lived through, and the patterns he'd seen repeat across centuries. He listened when she spoke, truly listened, with an attention that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. "Your kingdom has a fascinating history," he said on the fifth night, as they sat together on the balcony steps, dangerously close now, though they never touched. "Did you know that 300 years ago, wolves and vampires lived in relative harmony here?" "That's a myth," Illyra said, though she was intrigued despite herself. "It's not." Damien's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "I was there. The Alpha of that time, Marcus Silverpine, and the vampire lord of the Southern Covens formed an alliance. They shared territory, traded resources, even intermarried in some cases. What happened? What always happens. Fear. A new Alpha rose who believed in werewolf supremacy. A massacre followed, and vampires have been at war with your kind ever since." He turned to look at her. "But it doesn't have to be that way forever, Illyra. Cycles can be broken." She wanted to believe him. More than that. She was starting to need these conversations, these stolen moments where she could be something other than the lonely queen of a kingdom at war. "Aldrich would never agree to peace," she said sadly. "Not now. The war has become his identity." "Then perhaps," Damien said carefully, "Aldrich is no longer the right leader for these times." The words hung between them like a blade. Illyra should have been shocked, should have recoiled. Instead, she found herself considering the possibility. "You're talking about treason," she whispered. "I'm talking about survival, about saving your people from a king who would lead them to extinction in pursuit of a war he can never truly win." Damien shifted closer, and Illyra was suddenly aware of the heat radiating from him. Not the burning warmth of her wolf kind, but something darker, more intoxicating. "Tell me honestly, Illyra, if you could reshape this kingdom and the war, bring prosperity to your people, would you? Even if it meant betraying the mate bond." The mate bond. It was supposed to be sacred, unbreakable. But Illyra couldn't remember the last time she felt its pull, the last time Aldrich had looked at her with anything resembling love or even basic respect. "I don't know," she admitted. "You're lying," Damien said softly, but not unkindly. "You do know. You've known for a while now. You're just afraid to admit it." She turned to face him and found his eyes already on her, dark and fathomless. "What are you really asking me?" "I'm asking if you'll trust me," he said. "I'm asking if you'll help me save your kingdom from itself." He reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and brushed a strand of golden hair from her face. His fingers were cool against her skin, and she shivered, not from cold, but from something far more dangerous. "How?" she breathed. "My kind has gifts your werewolves lack," Damien said. "We can change our shape, become anyone we choose. With the right assistance, the right moment, I could become Aldrich, take his place. lead the kingdom to peace, while everyone believes their beloved Alpha King has simply seen reason at last. The implications crashed over Ilera like a wave. You want to replace my husband, to take his identity, his throne, his... everything, Damien confirmed, except you. You, Ilera, would remain exactly who you are, the queen, the heart of this kingdom. But finally, you would have a partner who values you, who sees your worth. This is madness, she said, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Is it? Or is it the first sane thing anyone has proposed in 3 years of bloodshed? His hand moved to cup her cheek, and Ilera's eyes fluttered closed despite herself. I'm not asking for your answer tonight. I'm asking you to consider it, to imagine what could be. When she opened her eyes, he was looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. This wasn't compulsion. She would have recognized that, fought against it with every fiber of her being. This was something far more perilous. Genuine connection, understanding, and yes, desire. Why me? She asked. If you can take anyone's shape, why do you need my help? Because I won't build a kingdom on lies alone, Damien said. I need someone who knows Aldrich intimately, who can guide me through the subtle mannerisms and private moments that would expose an imposter. I need someone the people already trust, someone who can legitimize the changes I'll make. He paused. But more than that, Ilera, I need you because I want you to choose this. To choose change. To choose me. The confession hung between them, honest and raw. Ilera's heart hammered in her chest. She was standing at a precipice, and whichever way she stepped would define not just her future, but the future of everyone she'd sworn to protect. I need time, she said finally. Time is something we have precious little of, Damien replied. Aldrich grows more unstable by the day. Yesterday he executed 3 prisoners without trial, including a youngling who'd barely reached maturity. How long before he turns that violence on his own people? On you, Ilera flinched because she'd heard about the executions, had seen the gleam of satisfaction in her husband's eyes when he'd told her about it. The man she'd married would never have done such a thing. That man was gone, replaced by something that wore his face but had lost his soul to the war. 1 week, she said. Give me 1 week to be certain. Damien studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 1 week. But Ilera? He leaned in close, his lips nearly brushing her ear. I think you've already decided. You're just afraid to admit what you want. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with her racing heart and the terrible, thrilling knowledge that he was right. The week that followed was torture. Ilera went through the motions of her daily life, attending court, overseeing the household, smiling at the appropriate moments, while her mind churned with possibilities and fears. She watched Aldrich more carefully than she had in months, cataloging every harsh word, every casual cruelty, every moment that confirmed what Damien had said. Her husband was no longer the man she'd married. On the 3rd day, Aldrich struck one of the servants for bringing his meal late. The boy couldn't have been more than 16, and the blow sent him sprawling across the stone floor, blood streaming from his nose. Ilera had intervened, helped the boy up, and received nothing but a dismissive grunt from her husband. That night, when Damien materialized on her balcony, she didn't pretend to hesitate. Tell me everything, she said. Tell me exactly what you need from me. His smile was triumphant, but also somehow sad, as though he understood the cost of what she was offering. The full moon is in 4 days. Aldrich will lead the hunting party into the Darkwood, as he always does. It's tradition, the Alpha proving his strength, bonding with his most trusted warriors. I know the tradition, Ilera said. I'm usually expected to wait here like a good little wife and pray for his safe return. Not this time. Damien moved closer, and Ilera didn't retreat. This time, you'll suggest a different route. Tell him you've heard reports of a vampire camp to the east, near the Bleeding Stones. He'll want to investigate, to claim the glory of destroying it personally. There is no vampire camp there, Ilera said. No, but there will be me. His eyes glinted in the moonlight, and a carefully prepared ambush. Nothing that will kill him. I need him alive and relatively unharmed for the transformation to work properly, but enough to separate him from his guards, to give me the opportunity one need. Ilara's stomach twisted. You'll take him, replace him, and no one will know. You'll know, Damien said softly, and that's what matters. You'll be the only one who sees the truth, who understands that everything I do afterward, I do for the kingdom, for peace, for you. How can you be so certain you can maintain a deception? She asked. Aldrich has mannerisms, ways of speaking, intimate knowledge, which is where you come in. Damien reached out and took her hand. His touch was cool but not unpleasant. You'll help me perfect the performance. Every private gesture, every personal detail. By the time I take the throne as Aldrich, I'll be more convincing than the man himself. And the real Aldrich? Ilara's voice was barely a whisper. Will be kept comfortable and contained until the transition is complete. Until your people are so content with their new king that the truth wouldn't matter even if it came out. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm not a monster, Ilara. I won't kill him unless absolutely necessary. But I also won't let him return to destroy everything we'll build. We. The word hummed between them, intimate and damning. When this is done, Ilara said slowly, when you were his face and sit on his throne, what becomes of us? Damien's expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. That depends entirely on what you want. I could be the devoted husband Aldrich once was. I could be your partner in ruling, your confidant, your friend. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. Or I could be something more, if you wished it, something real. The confession made her breath catch. This was the moment, she realized, the point of no return. I want my kingdom to survive, she said finally. I want my people to stop dying in a pointless war. I won't wake up without dread, to make decisions that matter, to be valued for my mind and not just my title. She met his eyes. And yes, I want to feel alive again, to feel seen, to feel desired. Then help me, Damien said, pulling her closer. Help me become him, and I promise you, Ilara, you'll have everything you've been denied. Power, purpose, passion. All of it. She should have felt guilty. Should have thought her vows, her mate bond, her duty. But all she felt was a fierce, burning relief that finally, someone understood her. Tell me what to do, she said. The next 3 days were a dangerous dance. Ilara played her part perfectly, planning the suggestion about the vampire camp with such casual concern that Aldrich seized upon it immediately, eager for another victory. She watched him plan the route, choose his warriors, never once suspecting that his own wife was orchestrating his downfall. At night, she met with Damien, teaching him the 1,000 small details that made Aldrich who he was. The way he rolled his shoulders before a fight, the slight limp in his left leg from an old injury, the particular tone he used when giving commands, his preference for rare meat and dark ale, the way he signed his name with a distinctive flourish. But they also talked about other things, about the kingdom Damien envisioned, one where werewolves and vampires could coexist, where trade flourished, where children didn't grow up knowing only war, about Ilara's own dreams for her people, dreams she'd stopped voicing years ago when Aldrich made it clear he wasn't interested. And slowly, inexorably, something shifted between them. What had begun as manipulation and mutual need deepened into genuine connection. Damien looked at her not as a means to an end, but as a woman worthy of admiration. And Ilara, starved for affection and respect, found herself drawn to him in ways that terrified and exhilarated her. On the night before the full moon, Damien came to her chambers for the first time. It was a risk. Guards patrolled the corridors, and Aldrich himself slept in the adjoining room, but he moved through shadows like they were part of him, materializing beside her bed without a sound. Ilara sat up, her heart racing. You shouldn't be here. I know. He sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel the cool air that surrounded him. But tomorrow changes everything. I needed to see you, to make certain you haven't changed your mind. I haven't, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Have you? Never. He reached out and cupped her face, his touch achingly gentle. Tomorrow I take his form, his throne, his life. But I need you to understand something. Ilara, Whatever happens afterward, whatever I become the world, with you, I will always be myself. I will never deceive you about who and what I am. A vampire, she whispered. A vampire, he confirmed. An immortal creature who has seen centuries pass and empires fall, who has learned that power without purpose is meaningless, and that the rarest treasure in any kingdom is someone who sees you truly and chooses you anyway. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You are that treasure, Elara, and I will spend however long you grant me proving myself worthy of that choice. She knew she should pull away, knew that what she was feeling, this pull toward him, this desperate hunger for connection, was dangerous and wrong and exactly what he'd intended to cultivate. But she also knew it was real. Whatever else Damien might be, whatever darkness lived in him, his desire for her was genuine. Show me, she breathed. Show you what? Your true form, not the handsome stranger you've been showing me. I want to see what you really are. For a moment, Damien looked uncertain. The first time she'd seen such an expression on his face. Then, slowly, he let his glamour drop. His features sharpened, becoming more angular, almost predatory. His eyes darkened to pools of absolute black. His fangs lengthened, visible even with his mouth closed. His skin took on a pale, marble-like quality that made him look carved rather than born. He was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure, utterly inhuman, and yet somehow still himself. This is what I am, he said quietly, a creature of darkness and blood, a predator who has killed more people than you could count. I can never walk in sunlight, can never taste food, can never be the warm, beating heart mate you were promised. He started to pull away. If you've changed your mind. Elara stopped him, her hand catching his. I haven't changed my mind. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. It was a gentle kiss, chaste almost, but it sealed something between them that went beyond words. When she pulled back, Damien's eyes had widened in something like wonder. Why? He asked hoarsely. Because you've been more honest with me in these few weeks than Aldrich has been in 3 years, she said simply. Because you see me as more than a possession or a symbol. Because when you talk about the future, you include me in it as an equal. She touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. And because I think I could fall in love with you, Damien. The real you, not the mask you wear or the role you'll play. But the vampire who wants peace, who values wisdom, who looks at me like I'm worth something. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow I become him, and everything changes. But tonight, let me be just Damien. Let me be the vampire who is falling in love with a queen who deserves so much more than the world has given her. They spent the rest of the night talking in whispers. Damien's glamour dropped. Elara's fingers intertwined with his. They didn't do anything that would violate her marriage vows. Not yet, though both knew that line would blur soon enough. But in those quiet hours before dawn, they built something fragile and precious. Trust, understanding, and the foundation of something that might, in time, be called love. When the first hints of sunrise began to color the sky, Damien rose to leave. Today, he said, his form shifting back to the handsome stranger he'd first appeared as. By sunset, Aldrich Silverpine will be gone, and I will wear his face. Are you ready? Yes, Elara said, and meant it. He kissed her hand like a knight from the old stories, then melted into the shadows. Elara sat alone in her chambers, watching the sun rise over her kingdom, knowing that when it set, nothing would ever be the same. The full moon rose heavy and red over the dark wood. Aldrich led his hunting party into the forest with characteristic arrogance, 12 of his best warriors flanking him. Elara had done her part perfectly. The suggestion about the vampire camp, the careful mention of how a victory there would cement his reputation as the greatest alpha of the age. He'd taken the bait without question, too consumed by his own ego to see the trap closing around him. Elara waited in the palace, outwardly calm, inwardly screaming with tension. Everything depended on the next few hours. If Damien failed, if the warriors proved too much, if anything went wrong, a howl split the night, then another. The sounds of battle echoed from the dark wood, and Elara forced herself to remain still, to not rush to windows, to maintain the facade of a concerned but confident queen. Hours passed like centuries. The moon climbed higher, and still the sound of combat continued. Illyra paced her chambers, her wolf pacing with her just beneath her skin, anxious and eager and frightened. Finally, as the moon reached its zenith, silence fell. Illyra stood frozen, barely breathing. Had it worked? Had Damien succeeded? Or had she just sent her husband into a massacre that would expose her betrayal? Then she felt it, a presence on her balcony. She turned slowly, hardly daring to hope. Aldrich stood there, bathed in moonlight. His armor was dented, blood-stained, but he was whole. He was alive. He was... "Illyra," he said, and the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every tone, exactly right. But his eyes held something different, something knowing. "Aldrich," she whispered, though she knew the truth. He smiled, and it was her husband's smile, but also not. "The hunting party was ambushed," he said, moving into the room with Aldrich's characteristic confidence. "Vampires, just as you warned. My warriors fought bravely, but in the chaos, I was separated from them." He touched his chest, where blood stained his tunic. "Wounded, but not beaten. I managed to escape and make my way back." It was a perfect story. Plausible, heroic, exactly what Aldrich would have done. The warriors who'd accompanied him would tell their own versions, none of them having seen their alpha fall, all of them assuming he'd made his own way home. "You're hurt?" Illyra said, playing her part. She moved toward him, examining the wound that Damien had carefully crafted. Superficial enough to heal quickly, serious enough to explain any minor inconsistencies in behavior. "I'll survive," Damien, as Aldrich said. Then quieter, meant only for her. "It's done. He's secured and safe. And now begins the real work." Illyra looked up into the face of her husband, a face that now belonged to someone else entirely, and felt a strange mix of guilt, relief, and dark excitement. "Welcome home, my king," she said softly, and sealed their conspiracy with a kiss that the real Aldrich hadn't earned in years. The transformation was nothing short of remarkable. In the days following the ambush, Damien inhabited Aldrich's skin with such perfection that even Illyra sometimes forgot the truth. He moved through the palace with the Alpha's commanding presence, issued orders in his voice, even maintained the slight distance that had characterized their marriage in recent years, at least in public. But in private, everything had changed. "The council is growing suspicious," Damien said one evening, 3 weeks after the switch. They were alone in the royal chambers, and he dropped the more aggressive mannerisms he wore for the court. "I've been too reasonable, too willing to consider alternatives to outright warfare. Gregor actually questioned whether the ambush had addled my brains." Illyra smiled despite herself. Gregor was Aldrich's most bloodthirsty general, a man who'd advocated for the extermination of all vampires regardless of age or allegiance. "What did you tell him?" "That seeing death up close had given me perspective," Damien said, loosening the leather vest that Aldrich favored. "That a true alpha thinks of his people's future, not just the next battle." He didn't like it, but he couldn't argue without questioning my authority. "You'll need to be careful," Illyra warned. "Change things too quickly, and they'll know something is wrong." "I know." He came to sit beside her, and for a moment his face rippled. A brief glimpse of his true features before Aldrich's face reasserted itself. "It's exhausting, maintaining this form every moment of every day. I've forgotten what it was like to hold a shape this long." Illyra reached out instinctively, touching his face. "Can you show me the real you?" Damien hesitated, then let the glamour drop. His features sharpened, his eyes darkened to that fathomless black, and his skin took on its pale marble quality. He looked relieved, like a man removing armor after a long battle. "Better?" Illyra asked softly. "Much." He leaned into her touch. "You have no idea what it means to have someone who sees me truly and doesn't flinch. I made my choice," she said simply. "I don't regret it." It was true. In the weeks since Damien had taken Aldrich's place, Illyra had watched her kingdom begin to heal. The brutal executions had stopped. Prisoners were treated with basic dignity. Damien had begun carefully floating the idea of peace negotiations, disguising them as strategic repositioning. The people were confused but cautiously hopeful. Their Alpha King seemed to have emerged from the ambush with newfound wisdom. Only Alara knew the truth, that their king was dead in all but body, imprisoned in a location Damien kept secret even from her, that the man leading them toward peace was the very creature they'd been taught to hate and fear. And only Alara knew that she was falling deeper in love with a vampire who wore her husband's face. "There's something I need to tell you," Damien said, his true face somber. "My people are ready to move. Within the month, key vampires will be positioned throughout the kingdom, merchants, advisors, artisans, all loyal to me, all working toward integration. The takeover," Alara said quietly. "The transition," Damien corrected. "I promise you peace, not occupation. But yes, vampires will begin to have influence here. Real influence. By this time next year, the Silver Pine Kingdom will be as much vampire as werewolf, and no one will quite know how it happened. Alara should have felt betrayed, should have raged at the manipulation. Instead, she found herself thinking strategically. You'll need to make them valuable first. Indispensable. Start with trade agreements. Vampires excel at night commerce when werewolves are less active. Cultural exchanges. Marriages between families." Damien's smile was genuine and delighted. "This is why I needed you. You don't just accept what I'm doing. You understand how to make it work." "I understand politics," Alara said, "and I understand that real change is gradual. But Damien," she held his gaze, "what happens when the truth comes out? Because eventually it will. Someone will notice. Someone will question. By then it won't matter," he said with quiet confidence. "By then, peace will be so firmly established, prosperity so evident, that even if they knew I was vampire, they wouldn't want to return to the old ways." He paused. "And by then, you and I will have built something that can't be undone." The intimacy in those words made Alara's breath catch. They hadn't consummated their relationship. That final line remained uncrossed, a vestige of her vows to a man who no longer existed in any meaningful way. But the emotional and intellectual intimacy they'd built was deeper than anything she'd shared with Aldrich, even in their best days. "Show me," she said suddenly. "Show you what?" "Where you're keeping him. Where Aldrich is." Damien's expression closed off immediately. "That's not. I need to see him," Alara insisted. "I need to know he's truly alive and unharmed. If I'm going to help you build this new kingdom, I need be certain you've kept your word." For a long moment, Damien was silent. Then he sighed, his form shifting back to Aldrich's. "Tomorrow night, I'll take you to him. But Alara, seeing him may be harder than you think." She didn't understand the warning until they stood in a hidden chamber deep beneath the palace, in catacombs so old that even Aldrich's father had forgotten they existed. There, in a cell that was comfortable but undeniably a prison, sat her husband. Aldrich looked up as they entered, and his eyes, those amber eyes she'd once loved, blazed with fury and madness. He lunged at the silver bars that contained him, snarling like a beast. "You treacherous whore," he howled at Alara. "I'll kill you. I'll tear out your throat and parade your corpse through the streets." Alara stepped back, shocked by the venom in his voice. This wasn't the man she'd married. This wasn't even the cold, distant king he'd become. This was something feral and broken. "He's been like this since we imprisoned him," Damien said quietly, maintaining Aldrich's form even here. "The forced separation from his kingdom, from his power, it's broken something in him. Without the throne to anchor him, the war madness has consumed him completely." "You did this to him," Alara whispered. "No." Damien's voice was firm. "He did this to himself. The war did this to him. I'm simply keeping him contained so he can't hurt anyone else." He gestured to the cell. "Look at him, Alara. Really look. Is this the man you married? Is this someone who could lead your people to anything but destruction?" She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. The creature raging in the cell bore Aldrich's face, but there was nothing of the man she'd loved in those mad, amber eyes. The war had hollowed him out, and what remained was only violence and hate. "I should feel guilty," Alara said softly. "I should feel something for him." "But you don't," Damien finished. "No." I just feel relief that he can't hurt anyone anymore, that he can't lead our people into the abyss he prepared for them. She turned to Damien. Does that make me a monster? It makes you a queen who loves her people more than her pride, Damien said. He gently took her arm, leading her away from the cell, and Aldrich continued screaming. It makes you strong enough to do what's necessary, no matter the cost. They climbed back to the palace in silence, but when they reached the royal chambers, Alara stopped him. I need to know, she said. When this is all secure, when your transition is complete, what happens to him? Damien met her eyes with complete honesty. He'll live, if that's what you want. Imprisoned but comfortable, kept in a kind of magical sleep where he can't harm himself or others. Or, he paused, he can be released, given a new identity, sent far from here where he can't threaten what we've built. The choice is yours. Alara, he's your husband, whatever else he's become. He stopped being my husband long before you arrived, Alara said quietly. He stopped the first time he chose war over wisdom, violence over compassion. She looked up at Damien's face, Aldrich's face, but animated by someone so much more. Keep him in prison. Keep him comfortable. But I never want to see him again. Damien nodded slowly. As you wish. The months that followed saw the careful, methodical transformation of the Silver Pine Kingdom. Damien moved with patient precision, each change small enough to avoid alarm, but significant enough to matter. Trade routes with vampire territories opened. A peace summit was announced. Werewolf nobles found themselves entertained by charming vampire merchants who seemed to appear from nowhere. And through it all, Alara stood at Damien's side, in public as a supportive queen, in private as his partner and advisor. She helped him navigate the complex politics of the werewolf court, warned him of potential opposition, smoothed over moments when his unfamiliarity with Aldrich's personal history threatened to expose him. But she also began to change. The sad, lonely queen who'd stood on her balcony all those months ago slowly transformed into someone confident and purposeful. With Damien, she could speak freely about policy and strategy. Her ideas weren't dismissed, but celebrated. Her counsel wasn't merely tolerated, but actively sought. And somewhere along the way, the line between political partnership and genuine love blurred completely. It was 6 months after the switch when Damien came to her chambers late at night, his true face already showing, a sign of how comfortable he'd become dropping the glamour when they were alone. The final phase begins tomorrow, he said without preamble. I'm announcing the formal peace treaty with the vampire covens. There will be resistance, but the groundwork is laid. The people are ready. And your people? Alara asked. The vampires you've been positioning throughout the kingdom will reveal themselves gradually over the coming weeks, not as conquerors, but as neighbors, as allies who've been living among the werewolves all along, proving that coexistence is possible. He smiled. It's brilliant, really. By the time anyone realizes how many vampires have integrated into the kingdom, it will be too late to undo it without destroying the very prosperity they've helped create. A bloodless conquest, Alara said, the only kind worth achieving. Damien moved closer, and Alara felt her breath quicken. They'd shared many intimate moments over these months. Conversations, planning sessions, quiet evenings discussing philosophy and dreams. But they'd never crossed that final boundary, never fully acknowledged the desire that sparked between them. Alara, Damien said softly, his dark eyes holding hers. Tomorrow, everything becomes real. The treaty will be signed. The kingdom will begin its true transformation, and there will be no going back. Before that happens, I need to know, where do we stand? What are we to each other? You wear my husband's face, Alara said, though her voice held no accusation. You sleep in his chambers. You sit on his throne. You make love to... She stopped, realizing what she'd almost said. I've never touched you as a husband touches a wife, Damien said quietly. Every night I've slept in the adjoining chamber, maintaining the fiction, even when no one was watching, because I needed you to choose me. Alara, not the role I play, not the face I wear, but me, the vampire who sees you as you truly are. I've already chosen you, Alara whispered. I chose you the night I helped you take him. I chose you every day I stood beside you and built this new kingdom. I chose you every time I looked at you and saw not the monster I was taught to fear, but the man who values me as an equal. Then let me make one more choice, Damien said. He stepped back, and before Alara's eyes his form shifted. Not to Aldrich. She'd seen that transformation countless times. Not to the handsome stranger he'd first appeared as, but to something between. His true vampire features, but softened, made less predatory, achingly beautiful in their honesty. This is as close to my real self as I can show in this world, he said. No glamour, no disguise, just a vampire Damien as I truly am. If you want me, Alara, if you truly want this, then it's this creature you're choosing. Not the Alpha King, not the perfect duplicate, but me. Alara crossed the distance between them and cupped his face in her hands. His skin was cool beneath her palms, his features sharp and inhuman, his eyes pools of living darkness. He was everything her kind had been taught to fear and hate, and she had never wanted anyone more. I choose you, she said, and kissed him. What followed was tender and passionate, desperate and gentle, a culmination of months of longing and denial. Damien worshipped her with a reverence that made her feel like something precious and powerful. And Alara gave herself to him completely, not as a queen to a king, not as a wife to a husband, but as a woman to a man who'd shown her she could be more than the role the world had assigned her. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her bed, and Damien kept his true form, refusing to hide himself from her even in this vulnerable moment. Tomorrow changes everything, Alara said softly, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. Tomorrow saves everything, Damien corrected. Your kingdom, my people, all of it. He turned to look at her, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. But tonight was just for us, for the vampire and the queen who defied everything they were taught to create something new. No regrets. Alara asked. Never, Damien said, and kissed her forehead with aching gentleness. I've lived centuries, seen empires rise and fall, known power and pleasure in all their forms. But this, building something meaningful, sharing it with someone who sees me truly. This is the first time I felt truly alive. Alara smiled against his cool skin. She betrayed her husband, conspired to overthrow her king, helped orchestrate the vampire infiltration of her kingdom. By every law and tradition of her people, she was a traitor deserving of death. But lying there in Damien's arms, watching the moon set over the kingdom they were reshaping together, she felt no guilt. Only a fierce, burning certainty that they'd done the right thing. That sometimes salvation came wearing the face of the enemy. That sometimes love meant destroying everything you'd known to create something better. The next day, King Aldrich Silpine, or the creature wearing his face, announced a peace treaty with the vampire covens to thunderous shock and scattered applause. It would take time, Alara knew, for the people to accept this new reality. There would be resistance, suspicion, perhaps even attempts at rebellion, but they would weather it together. She and Damien would stand before their people as the Alpha King and his queen, all while knowing the beautiful, dangerous truth that lay beneath the surface. The vampire had claimed his throne. The queen had chosen her monster. And together, they would forge a kingdom that proved peace could be more powerful than any war. Years passed, and the Silver Pine Kingdom transformed beyond recognition. Vampires and werewolves walked the same streets. Their children played together. Their families intermarried. Trade flourished. The arts bloomed, and the kingdom became a beacon of prosperity that other nations sought to emulate. King Aldrich, forever young, forever strong, forever wise, ruled with a firm but compassionate hand, his beautiful Queen Alara at his side. Rumors occasionally surfaced about the Alpha King's unusual habits, his aversion to sunlight, the way he seemed to never age. But prosperity had made the people generous, and they explained away the inconsistencies with the same willful blindness that had allowed the vampire integration to happen in the first place. Deep beneath the palace, in a cell no one remembered existed, the real Aldrich Silverpine dreamed madness dreams, kept in magical sleep by the creature who'd stolen his life. Sometimes he would surface briefly, rage against his bonds, then sink back into darkness. But no one heard his screams, and no one came to rescue him. He'd become a ghost in his own kingdom, a footnote in a history being rewritten by the very enemy he'd sworn to destroy. And above him, in the royal chambers, Illyra lay in her vampire lover's arms, secure in the knowledge that she'd traded one king for another and gained a kingdom reborn in the bargain. She'd sold her loyalty, betrayed her vows, conspired in the overthrow of everything she'd been raised to believe in, and she would do it all again without hesitation. Because this was the truth that Damien had shown her, the dark romance that had seduced her as thoroughly as any glamour, that sometimes the monster was a hero, that sometimes betrayal was the highest form of loyalty, that sometimes you had to destroy everything you loved to save it. The moon rose red over the Silver Pine Kingdom, and in its light, a vampire king kissed his werewolf queen, and they smiled at the beautiful, terrible thing they'd built together. A kingdom of shadows and moonlight, a throne claimed not through strength but through deception, a love forged in betrayal and conspiracy. And neither of them would change a single moment of the dark, twisted path that had brought them here, to power, to peace, and to each other,